All right. Thanks to those joining me live and to those joining me on archive. So I've been watching a lot of you. Okay, I've been lurking in the shadows. Like you don't think I'm watching because I'm not leaving comments, but I'm watching all of you. Yeah, yo. So check it out. All right, and I want to do this response video in let me just say there's levels to this, okay? Like there is, and so this is I'm coming at this from this perspective, okay? Because I'm not a direct thinker. I don't look at direct reasons for anything. I'm a very underlying thinker, right? Like I believe in most cases things affecting the sport, okay, that there's this deep underlying reasoning to it. It's never like this direct cause that makes things happen in the sport, or not make things, that the lack of making things happen. I want to make sure that is absolutely clear. And a pop-up came up on my screen, which is a big pet peeve of mine. But anyway, this piece of shit Toshiba laptop that I only use because I bothered to buy it. But anyway, I get it, right? I get it. Well, it's this is the age of social media, and everybody wants things now. Like I want it now, right? Right? Like I want it now. This moment, I want it now. I want it now. That's it, right? And to a certain degree, that's correct, right? But in today's age, people have their attention spans aren't that great. They can't comprehend things very well. They want information immediate. They want simple catchphrases when it comes to politics. I mean, it's just the way it is, right? But that's not what we're dealing with here, okay? Let me kind of tell you what the issue is. Okay, so number one, right? I get your point that, that you make of, because I was listening to your video, and there was a time where you said, name me all the times that boxing fans got the fight that they wanted immediately, right? And you want to, look, I can't really compile a list. You know why? Because for the last 20 years or so, boxing has been absolutely terrible to its fans. Terrible, right? And this formula that you're talking about of letting fights marinate and, normal, we're used to it, let's wait on the fights, let's let them marinate, let's make them bigger. Come up with some examples of fights that turned out to be a big fight, like Hagler, versus Leonard, for example. That's one example, but I could give you other examples of fights that could have been, were expected to be, and never happened because of this, because of politics, because we gotta wait, or we gotta let it marinate. There's just I could find you other examples as well, right? Gamboa Juanma, right? That fight should have happened and never happened because they wanted to let it marinate, but unfortunately they let it out too long and it fucking rot. But let's just say this. Let's say we just take it at face value. This formula, right? Let's talk two formulas, because undisputed basically means the man, the champion. There is no dispute. There is one man. He's the best. There you go. Right? So we could separate this in two eras. We can go alphabet bout era. We can go when there was a man in a division era. Well, only one of those eras was boxing the, top three, in many cases, number one. The heavyweight championship was the greatest prize in sports. There was only one of those eras. Okay. Now I understand that we're not going to subcategorize here. We were basically just taking from 30 years ago when the alphabet soup belts came along to when there was a man, an undisputed champion. We're going to compare those two. So survey says that boxing was on it started a very deep decline when the alphabet belts came along. It started a big decline as they started to add more and more divisions to the sport that were completely unnecessary, right? It started a decline where for money purposes, they got rid of the same day weigh-in, which worked perfectly fine for a century. And as of right now, like maybe because you're in the UK and there seems to be a little bit of a boom there at the moment, okay? I think it's a sugar rush, to be honest with you. But I don't know. I can't tell you much about the UK, all right? But overall, all right, especially in the United States, boxing has hit a deep, deep decline in popularity. Deep decline. The perception of the sport has been damaged so bad. I mean, you have more people turned off by boxing than turned on by it. That's just the reality. I mean, we have to face those facts. There was at one point, New York City had hundreds of gyms. Now they got a couple dozen, and they're really MMA gyms with a boxing ring in it. All right, and half of those are aerobic instruction gyms. All right, you know, give me a 1, give me a 2, with a bunch of soccer moms, okay, quote unquote boxing. All right, and it's really kickboxing, and it's annoying. All right, so that's what we're dealing with right now. Right, we're dealing with a sport that is in dire need of a lot of injections, okay, because it's in life support. That's what we're dealing with, okay? Now, I'm not going to say, oh, the sport's going to die. There's no countries where boxing is popular. All I'm saying is, especially in the United States, boxing has been hurt drastically, all right? So, and that's just the reality, right? Now let's talk about boxing fans, right? So, basically, in essence, if I understand the point correctly, is that boxing fans can't demand fights. You know, it's look, I get the point. We can't get the fight immediately at every single, you know, we can't get it next month. Like, I get that, right? You know, and I can't speak for everybody. I can only speak for myself. But from what I've gathered, I honestly don't hear, you know, maybe I'm missing it, anyone saying really that Joshua is scared of Wilder and he needs to fight Wilder now. In fact, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's a fight I would like to see. It's a makeable fight. It's a fight that makes sense. It's a fight that I don't believe we have to wait years to watch. Okay, it's bringing up Hearns versus Hagler. Like, what if you think we're going to wait 6-7 years for that? I mean, we don't, like, boxing. The heavyweight division isn't that deep. You know, we don't have that luxury of letting the fight marinate that long because it's not a deep division, right? And I don't think it's deep anyway, right? And like we just don't have that. And I don't see why that's not a fight that can happen in 2018. It totally can. I have no problem with Klitschko getting his rematch first. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Okay, and fans, look, fans wanting fights and putting pressure on fighters is a real thing. It is, right? And maybe some believe that Brooke would have fought Spence anyway, and it would have happened anyway. Maybe some people believe that Canelo would have fought Gennady Golovkin anyway, right? It would have had. Look, let me tell you something, man. If that fight was not happening next, people would be saying the same thing, right? They would be saying that, oh, don't worry, they're letting the fight marinate. They want to make the fight bigger, and that's what they would be saying, right? But to me, there's real pressure because in any market, all right, and anybody who knows about economics knows this, all right, in any market, demand rules, right? Demand can overrule a lot. Demand is a very powerful thing. And if boxing fans don't demand certain fights, certain fights would not happen. You don't believe me? How about we just stop doing them? See what happens, right? There has to be a demand for fights, right? You need fans. That the sport needs people demanding fights, and to be honest, I don't see anything wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying I want to see this fight next. It's a fight that should happen. Let's make it happen. And that's it. And look, these alphabet belts, they're not consistent, right? They'll give certain fighters passes. They'll overlook their own rules at times, and so I don't mind anybody saying, well, fuck the IBF, right? I just don't mind it. It doesn't bother me whatsoever, because these sanctioning bodies say fuck the fighter any moment that they get an opportunity to, right? So it works full circle to me, all right? And fans, just because Roy Jones never became undisputed, just because there hasn't been really that many undisputed champions, it doesn't mean that we can't, demand that we start a new movement, all right, and start pushing for undisputed champions. Because to me, it's a crime that Roy Jones never became undisputed champion. Bernard Hopkins did it, so it's not like it's impossible, right? And that's a very unique accomplishment. But I want it to become a thing. And sometimes, change is a good thing, and we need some positivity in the sport, for once, because it's going in a downward spiral, right? It's treated like a niche sport. It's treated like a joke. People don't respect the sport. And why don't they respect the sport? For a lot of the things people are saying are normal. Oh, it's normal not to know who the best in the division is. That's totally normal. Well, that's the problem. That's not like just because that's the norm doesn't mean it's like the right thing. Just because that's the norm and it's been the norm for 30 years in most cases, it doesn't mean that that's what we should just settle for. Because the norm has been killing the sport. It's been damaging the sport. And anyone who thinks, well, look, Joshua just fought in the stadium, look, if you want to have an event-driven sport, and where there's some fights here and there, and a fighter pops up and everything revolves around that one fighter, if that's what people want, then by all means, okay? Me, I just want a healthy sport. I want a sport where every division is kicking it, and there's great fights going on, and the sport to starts gaining some respect again. That's what I want, right? That's what I would like to see. And to me, the norm is not good, right? It hasn't been helping the sport. The pay-per-view model is the norm, but it doesn't mean it helped the sport. It's not like I'll put up the popularity of boxing before the pay-per-view era to the pay-per-view era any day. I'll debate that any day, right? It's when Ali fought Frazier in Madison Square Garden. That was not on pay-per-view. Yeah, but that's one of the biggest sporting events in history, right? When Joe Louis fought Max Schmeling in the rematch, that wasn't on pay-per-view. It was actually on radio. Okay, but literally the entire freaking country and the world listened to that fight. And it was one of the biggest events. Forget sport, just events in history, right? World leaders were tuning into that fight. And I'm not saying that, well, like if boxing isn't like that anymore, that's not what I'm saying, right? What I'm saying is the sanctioning bodies, the multitude of them, and their corruption has been bad for the sport. They've been parasites to the sport. Leeches, okay, they've been sucking the blood out of the sport, which was once perhaps the most respected sport in the world. There was a time when, if you think Joshua beating Klitschko was a big deal, and it was, You know, there was a time where every heavyweight title fight was as big as the Super Bowl, right? It was a big deal. Everybody wanted to watch it. And there was one champion, right? And you could say the same thing about the other divisions, and there was less divisions. If I were to go back to when the sport was at its height of popularity, all the things that are the norm today were not the norm, right? So I'll share my thoughts. That's what I wanted to share, right? And maybe we could do a live discussion on this. I would like to have a discussion. I really would, right? A back and forth discussion. Maybe tomorrow, right? Let me know. And this is just boxing talk. This is all this is, right? This is DStyleBoxing. And hey, keep it boxing.